Love that tune. Welcome to our Hatchery Live. My name is Jose Leal, and I'm with Matt Perez, my pilot and co-pilot on the our Hatchery.live journey, as well as the Radical World space. And today we have Kylie Stedman-Gomes. I can't believe I misspoke that. Kylie Stedman-Gomes. And it is Gomes with an S. She's married to a Portuguese, and she's living in Portugal and originally from Australia. Welcome, Kylie.
Hi, great to be here.
Nice to have you. So we typically start with a little bit of a question about you. What makes you even be considered to be asked to come and talk to us about Radical and the Radical World when typically it means somebody's doing something different? So what led you to do something different? And how did you get to this stage in your life where that something different is attracting you to having this conversation?
Well, I had a career up until 2017, which I really, really didn't love. Right? So I sort of fell into it, and then I kind of stayed into it, going in just from one job to another in project management and in business analysis, because it was the thing that was there and because it was needed by others. And I wasn't really looking at what it was that sort of made me feel good, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then in 2017, sort of as a final straw kind of thing, my stepfather, who I was quite close to, actually passed away. And I took stock, let's say, of my life. And and I left. I stepped off the treadmill and I started looking around at the world. And I thought, wow, I'm not the only one who is doing this, compromising myself in order to sort of make a living. And so I just started going, okay, well, what is there that feels right to me? And what is it that makes things feel right to everybody? And I think what I see with Radical is that same kind of focus. You know, they're not being forced to do things that are just to eke out survival, but instead to do things that bring us alive.
And that journey that you've just described, I mean, thank you for being succinct, but I wonder if you can give us a little bit of some details in that, because that world of the tech, the business analyst and so forth, that's changed a lot from the 70s, 80s to recently, and it seems to me that it's become more of a cog in the wheel. Maybe that's my perception. How do you see that? Because it seems that people are getting hired, and just be put in that place to fill that hole, to do that task. And I don't think that was the role that was originally in that space from a business analyst perspective. It was a very important role.
So are you asking how did I end up in that business analyst role?
No, I'm asking, did you see it transform from when you first joined to, later in your career? What was happening as far as the respect for that role, the respect for that type of work in the organizations you were doing?
Okay, so well, what pulled me into it in the first place was that I was working for a nonprofit organization, and so it was the service arms of sort of a regional center that had nursing homes and disability employment and like a crisis telephone hotline, that sort of thing. And the technology was not really supporting what it was that the people who were working, and it's usually a passion sort of driven thing, it wasn't really supporting them. And I'd come from a background prior to that of doing data entry and business administration across a whole heap of different industries. So when I first stepped into it, it was really this sense of finding what was needed, and then working out how to meet those needs. So I really quite enjoyed it when I got in there, because there was a real feeling of, of making a difference,
Right.
Not only for the other people that were employed in the organization, but also for the people that they were serving in the community. And then over time, I suppose I ended up seeing it move away from a person-centered perspective to something that was almost technology-centered. So it was about what would make the application work, or like how could you streamline the process, and sort of, instead of really focusing on what people needed, instead just on how could you do it more cheaply, or how could you make the process itself more efficient. And that, yeah, I'm not sure if that's still the case now, because I'm 6 years out of it, but I didn't enjoy that particular direction myself.
Yeah. I often think that we've built systems to control people rather than to help people, and that often is kind of the role. So tell us a little bit about what you've started to explore over these 6 years, and where you've landed on the kind of work that you want to do, and how that's taking shape.
Yeah. So when I stepped out, the first stepped off the treadmill, let's say, the first thing that sort of caught my attention was what's going on in the world at large. And I noticed that it wasn't just business analysis, obviously, that was, or project management, which I'd done a lot of, that sort of seemed to be more focused on processes rather than people, and on I'd say concepts rather than underlying reality and humanness and needs and living. It seemed to be pretty much everything. So, bureaucracy was much the same way, and the markets were much the same way. And so I'd had an interest in the commons for quite some time, and I kept seeing how that was being extracted from. And anyway, so I've always had an interest as well in models and in different ways of looking at things, which are sort of regard as lenses. So pick up a lens, have a look through it. Pick up another lens, have a look through that one. And I was looking at a particular one of these that was very, very business focused, which was Simon Wardley's Pioneers, Settlers and Town Planners. And I saw that there was something in that was really useful for thinking about the things that people might actually be attracted to, as well as noticing that that if you look at things sort of by activity, it sort of becomes quite easy actually to find out what it is that you're interested in. And that's when I had the Kairotic flow come up, which is what's the little tag that we've put on this session.
And so I want to know what rewilding means in a minute, but tell us a little bit about Kairotic flow and how it came about. You've just said sort of what sparked it. How long have you been working on it, and what does it mean to you, and how do you think it can help us?
Yeah, so in the format that it is now, which is sort of a diagram that's got 6 archetypes around it. The right-hand side of the diagram is coloured in orange because it's the obvious stuff that we look at all the time, and that was based on Simon Wardley's Pioneers, Settlers and Town Planners. And the other side I've coloured in purple, and it's the side that I've added, because what I realised when I was looking at the Pioneers, Settlers and Town Planners is that it was only looking at one side of the kinds of tensions that we're always holding. You might think yin and yang, or you might think internal and external, or you might think intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, right hemisphere, left hemisphere, like at all of those. And I just realized that it wasn't being looked at as the full cycle and the balancing that it is continuously. So I added in to the cycle another 3 archetypes, which are steward, curator, and scout. And they do actually kind of go in that order. So I've got it shown as clockwise. So pioneer, settler, town planner, steward, curator, scout. And there's dynamics in between each of the opposites, which is like a tension that sort of gets held.
Mm-hmm.
And these patterns seem to play out at every level of life. So cells seem to go through that in their life cycle. Plants go through it. Humans go through it. Teams go through it. Organizations go through it. And it just sort of struck me as a pattern that just kind of keeps occurring over and over. And one of the other things that occurs over and over, especially at the human level, is not seeing that purple side very well. And that's where, that's sort of an internal focus in a lot of ways. So our purpose and the why are we doing something in the first place, and what are the needs and what are the possibilities for meeting those needs, and that kind of thing. So so I've ended up using Kairotic flow quite a bit to help people focus in on those things, like what is your purpose, or for an organization as well, like what is the purpose of the organization, and how do you express that and keep coming back to it rather than getting caught up in the in the processes or the technologies or the focusing things that we use on the orange side of the cycle.
Can you tell us a little bit about the origin of Kairotic?
The origin of Kairotic?
Yeah, the word itself.
Yeah. So it comes from
I got to open the door, but I can still hear you.
Okay. Yeah, it comes from the Greek word kairos, which is one of, I think that there are 3 all up. There may be another one I don't know about, but at least 3 concepts that the ancient Greeks had for time. One of them was is aeon, which is sort of, we use as eon now, which is like the really long cycles of time. Mm-hmm. And then there's chronos, which we use all the time. It's dividing things up into equal segments. So, like our calendars and the number of hours in a day and, all of that kind of thing, think chronological.
The linear movement of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's kairos, which is living cycles. So you can think of it in terms of of seasons. For example, it's like trees, for instance, will flower at the time that is right in terms of their internal and external conditions. So they don't particularly care what day of the week or month or year it is. They do it when the conditions are right. And we can see that for ourselves as well. So if a pregnancy will last as long as it needs to last, and it's around about 9 months, but it's certainly not, it's
Right.
certainly not on the clock kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not chronological in nature, it's kairotic in nature is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So Kairotic is more about life and living beings than processes and technologies and stuff like that. I got it. Okay.
And you said something that, Kylie, that I lost the train of thought, but you were talking about the fact that you're helping organizations see the organization's purpose and so on and so forth. Can you tell me what you think about purpose as an organizational purpose? How does an organization hold a purpose? What's your definition of that? Because I want to be clear about my question. We see purpose as something that emerges from living beings, and the idea that a legal entity has a purpose that it holds by itself, that's unique to it, seems to us to be a little bit of a misconception. So can you tell us a little bit about what you mean by that and how that we can square that circle?
Yeah. So the legal side of things, I would actually just refer to as the town planner archetypes way of standardizing things so that, so that we can see what it is that we're actually relating to. But that's from the outside, so whenever people come together to do something, whatever it is that they're actually doing, that has an archetypal flavor. And whatever legal entity you wrap around that is it's different from the name from the thing itself. So, and you could say the same about human beings. It's like we're born, we don't have a name, we don't have citizenship, we don't have like any of those things. That doesn't take away from our essential nature as living creatures. So organizations, like, yes, we could look at them as as the legal entity that we define as an organization.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could take a more living approach to it and say, well, what is this organism that sort of emerged, and what purpose does it play in its ecosystem, or in the community, if you like, that it is that it's sort of emerged to serve.
So this organism, the company, let's say, is made up of us who participate in it. And do you see that we then emerge a new purpose collectively? A new purpose emerges for us as a collective within this company.
Essentially, yeah.
And how do you go about the process with Kairotic Flow? How do you go about the process of identifying a purpose for such emergent organization?
Yeah. Well, so it's essentially a question of, well, what is it that you're, what is the need that you're looking to meet? What is the nature of what it is that you're looking to do? So, for instance, if it's something like, Cordial World is one of the organizations, or I should say nascent organizations at this stage, that I'm consulting to at the moment. And Cordial World is looking to bring community back into the decision-making process. So we've gotten to the point culturally of feeling that we can only be steered by the political parties, which is sort of like it's almost like a menu of options, and you have to select what's on the menu. And if the option's not there, you can't choose it. But what a community actually needs, for instance, and what it feels that it needs, and what it, or even what its desires are, is not necessarily going to appear on that menu. So Cordial World is sort of seeking to find how can we get a sense of what the community needs, and then have that go through to the to the market, so that the market can figure out what it offers, and also through to government as well, to make it more responsive to actually meeting what the community needs, instead of just what is going to get them into power. So rather than the what are you going to vote for kind of surveys that we get, instead here's how we're going to do what it is that you actually genuinely want us to do.
Or a top down, here's the plan, we've made the strategic plan, you've got to execute on it, good luck, let's execute on that. So you're saying this approach of community, this approach of collaborating, brings about a different way of defining what role that organization has, that company has. How does the Kairotic Flow view of it change the outcome of that conversation? Because from a radical perspective, we talk about doing a radical agreement or a radical exploration with one another. Kylie, are you there? Looks like Kylie froze. Oops, we just lost Kylie. So Matt, what are you
Hopefully
thinking about? Oh, there she is. She's back. She's back.
Sorry about that. Yeah. My Wi-Fi decided it was going to switch on me.
Well, I'm glad that it kept switching to a point where it worked. Did you hear my question?
No, I think I heard probably about half of it. So if you would repeat.
Now, if I
Great.
can remember what I said, let's just hope my old brain works. How does the Kairotic model help change that conversation? Because it's a conversation that many people have in many different ways. In Radical, we talk about collaborative agreements and the ability to have these conversations that bring about a different way of seeing each other. And we struggle with it. Is it an agreement? Isn't an agreement? It's a process and so forth. So tell us a little bit about what the Kairotic flow process of attaining that kind of understanding of what our purpose is as a group.
Okay, so I probably don't know quite enough about Radical to apply it to what you're doing, and I think you're probably well on track with what you need to do. But I'll just I'll talk about Cordial World again for a second. So one of maybe the first thing is sort of finding out, okay, well, what is the nature of this organization? And what we've looked at for Cordial World is that it's passing the power, if you like, between steward and curator in the Kairotic flow model. So that's the nature of it. It's got some steward characteristics and it's got some curator characteristics. And then knowing that when you go to set up governance and when you go to set up the processes and when you go to find, what kind of legal structure it needs, all of that information becomes, all of those activities become very obvious, and the sequence of what you do also becomes very obvious. So what Kairotic flow does really is it allows you to focus in on the appropriate scope and then easily see what comes next. Because we end up getting caught up a lot in our own minds and our concepts and our, like the checklists that you have to go through to do things. And we lose sight of what the purpose was in the first place. So it's almost like you kind of follow down a checklist and then it's like, oh, okay, now I need to reorient. Where was I actually supposed to be? And it's a very quick way to reorient again and go, oh, okay, well, we've just done our legal setup. So, that's the town planner part of this cycle taken care of. Now let's move into steward, which is the one that follows after town planner, and make sure that we've got the what's needed in place in order to maintain it and to keep it going and to keep the whole organization in mind going forward. And then onto curator, what else is needed, and so on. And you just kind of keep going around the cycle.
So is it fair to say, maybe I'm misunderstanding here, but it feels like what you're describing is that it's a cycle of things that happen when the time is right for them to happen, but that the cycle has that patterning of going from a certain place to the next place to the next place, all 6 of these, and that in your view those patterns are linear in a sense, in that they go one after the other, but they cycle through to different layers of things that are happening in the organization. Is that a fair way to describe that?
Yes, I'll probably add a bit more, sort of in the sense that the outputs of one archetype or of one type of or one sort of phase of activity has the outputs that then become the inputs to the next archetype. And then it does what, you do the activity there and then its outputs are the inputs for the next archetype. So it's kind of like each one naturally feeds the next. So yes, it certainly does go around the cycle in a sequential kind of manner, but it's not in a chronological manner. So you don't spend the same amount of time in each one. So sometimes, it will basically skip very fast through one part of the cycle and then, spend a long time in, particularly in wherever the purpose of the organization is. So if it's a stewarding kind of organization like health tends to be, then a lot of the attention will be there. So, it'll kind of flip fairly fast through the next couple. Sometimes it'll go slowly and then it'll stop and just sort of keep going around in steward for a long time until something fails. And then it goes through the cycle again. And, and then it's almost like a gravitational pull to wherever the purpose is.
I see Matt's furrowing his brow, so I'm wondering what he's struggling with conceptually here.
No, I just realized that Kairotic rhymes with erotic. And I don't know what that means, but that's why I was furring my whatever. And one of the things that we do here, we let you talk for 10, 15 minutes about your business and what it does. And then we try to couple it with the radical pattern, if you will, the radical foundation, and see where it fits. And I'm having a hard time fitting those two, except on the meaning and purpose side. I see a relationship there, but the planners and this and that and the other, I don't, I'm not feeling it, or I don't know what it is. I'm just not getting it. So what do you expect to, when you go through all this in the ideal company, whether it's Cordial World or some other world, what would they do different?
Okay, so if I go back to what I was saying about the business analysis and ending up focusing on process more than on people, this is probably a good part to think about. So because there are a certain number of activities that need to be done, right? Where I think we end up, with this perspective thing of forcing people to do something that they don't want to do, we're not looking for the match, if you like, in between, what people are enthused by or naturally drawn towards, and what the activity is that needs to be done. So, it's instead of trying to turn people into cogs, if you like, it's by making it clear what the activity is that needs doing, then it's far more possible, I think, for people to kind of go, oh, well, that is something that I like doing, or it's not something that I like doing. So, for me, for instance, my preferred activities are in the scout archetype. So the further I get away from there, and two away it's almost like a blind spot, or it's something that's really hard to do. So it makes it easy for me personally if I'm asked to step in to do an activity that is the two away each way. So if it's a settler kind of activity, which is focusing on optimizing processes, then I can very easily kind of go, no, I'm not. I don't really want to do that. That's not the thing that I want. And to be able to sort of draw my own boundaries much more quickly than I would otherwise. And the same,
Who determines the tasks that need to be done? I mean, somebody a body comes up with that, right?
The what? Sorry,
somebody, a human being, or a dog, it doesn't matter, comes up with, we have to do X and Y and Z. And Z, sorry. And who does that?
This doesn't have anything to say about who does or doesn't do that. Ideally, with the Kairotic flow approach, it is something that actually just does need to be done, and people are going to be able to see it and then go towards it or not as they wish to. Now, an organization can still, if they want to choose that thing of going, okay, we're just going to have one person who's going to take an authoritarian approach, then it's not going to stop them from doing that, but it won't work very well, especially if the activity itself is not conducive to those kind of conditions. So
Okay.
yeah, so for I'll go straight for town planner again. In town planner, it's like the conditions that are needed are a great degree of transparency and stability, and things being, done in a certain way. So if you think about things like the infrastructure of roads or utilities and that kind of thing, then sort of reality says that you have to do this, and then you do that, and then you do that. And that appeals to some people and doesn't appeal to others. But if you take that same approach and you try to make it so that, that people who are trying to do something really creative are going to do it according to that, really structured, ordered way of doing things, then it's just going to completely, squash whatever creativity.
Not work. Okay. All right.
Let me try to see if I understand this, because I think I'm getting it, Kylie. So forgive me for being so slow. But what I think I'm hearing is the work you've done is to say that, and I forget the gentleman whose original model you started with, but there's a model here that sees that things happen in a certain way, that you need to do this, and then that generally creates this, and that generally creates that, and so on. And you've added that other side of that is about not just about the doing, but the curating of this, but the process of going around to generate all of that. And you're saying in organizations and in people, I'm wondering if this is true, but this is what I'm hearing. In organizations and in people, this process is very similar. But people in an organizational setting, they play a role typically in some of these, but not all of these aspects of this new way of seeing time within a flow of what we do. And that in that new way of seeing time, that what we can do is we can actually identify for ourselves where I fit in this cycle and where others might fit in this cycle, so as to help find a balance between us as a team, but also to look at it at this meta level, which is to see what's this cycle for the organization as a whole. Mm-hmm. Am I understanding this? What did I miss?
Yes, no, you are understanding it. There's a relatively simple example that I like to use to sort of show that we do all go through these cycles, like in many different ways every day. In fact, you could think of the entire cycle as representing 24 hours as well, with, like the orange side sort of being very much daytime. So at the top being dawn, going through the day, and then over on the purple side sort of being like night, right? So there are certain things that we do, like when we're asleep, that we don't do when we're awake. And it's that similar kind of feeling. Or you could think of it as seasons as well. So, that over on the light side is kind of like spring and summer, and then you go in towards autumn, and then winter is kind of like the night time or the sleeping time. And we all have times that we prefer. It's some people are morning people, and some people are, they might prefer summer or something like that. And it's not a direct match, but it does sort of give the idea that, if someone prefers to work, like in cool conditions, then maybe they're, maybe asking them to go to Thailand to work in the middle of, the hot season is not going to be especially appealing to them. So it's that kind of a feel, I suppose. And in fact, the seasons is a good way to think about the sequential nature of things as well. That we don't expect that when it's winter, that after that we're going to have summer straight away without spring sort of coming in between.
So let me try to encapsulate that even a little bit tighter from a radical perspective. That what it does is it provides us with an understanding of that there are things that people do that some of us are more innately adept at, and it fits us better. and that understanding those things can help us see where people sit in the flow of things. But that also, that same flow at an organizational level can be an alignment tool for us to be able to see what's the next thing that as an organization we need to do, so that we can all sort of look at that and say, who fits in this new role, who might be the leader in this new season of the organization. Does that also apply?
Yes. Yeah. And you can look at it also as in, you know what the organization is actually requiring, and then you can put out the invitation, if you like, so that people know what they're going to be stepping into, and they can move towards it. If it's appealing or not, if it's not,
So it's a lens with which to look at ourselves and the organization we're working on that helps us understand that it's not a fixed view of an organization or ourselves, but one that is in motion and flows from one season to the next, from one time to the next, and that we're all party to that process.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It gives an insight as to when to do what, in a way, and if it's a good when for you, and if it's a good what for you as well.
So from a radical perspective, I would say, okay, assuming I wrap my head around this, because as I've said, I haven't had the chance to do that, but it's a tool that helps us bring alignment to what we understand we're doing, bring alignment to what I understand what I'm doing, and to help the conversation between us and the planning that we might do, the organizing that we might do collectively. And so it's sort of this centerpiece of being able to look at things together without imposing something, my lens or your lens or somebody else's lens. Here's this lens that might be more broad and natural in view that provides us with that. Is that?
Yes. I mean, I would think of it as like an orienting or navigational tool. Yeah.
Okay, we can keep talking for a while here. It's been very educational, although I'm more confused than educated at this point, but that's good. So what I want to do now is announce next week's guest, and it's going to be Donna Jones, supporting human adaptability, restoring humanity in workplaces, the key to fulfilling a great mission. Donna has been a friend for a long time, and she's a good person to know and a good person to listen to. So looking forward to that one. And that's that. That's for next week. Kylie, like I said, it's been very educational for me.
Yeah.
Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, I just want to thank Kylie for joining us, for being patient with us as we're learning this, and taking the time to talk about, because I think ultimately all the work that people are doing in this new space is helping us understand how we do collaboration. And if we don't understand how to do collaboration, whether it's radical or any other way of seeing the world, then we will fail. So any tools, any perspectives that help us figure out how to do collaboration better, in my book, is a beneficial idea. And we won't know until we try, and we won't know until we experiment. And that is our biggest thing, is experiment with as many things as you can, figure out how those experiments work out, adjust, adapt, and move forward. So I look forward to hearing more about the experiments you make and how they work out, and if we can, apply them in future experiments ourselves. So thank you. Thank you very much.
That would be great.